The Southern African Development Community and East African Community leaders meeting in Tanzania to discuss the crisis in the Democratic Republic of Congo has ended. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa and Rwandan President Paul Kagame attended the meeting, while the DRC President Felix Tshisekedi joined virtually. For more on this, we are joined by SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, the meeting has ended. A statement about the content of the meeting has come out. Can you give us a sense of what the agenda was and how the conversation played out?
Well, all leaders agree that you need a permanent solution to this crisis. They also conveyed messages of condolences in terms of the loss of lives, not only to the troops, but also to ordinary people in Congo. And that would include a message for speedy recovery of those who were injured. But I just want to take you through to some of the decisions. One, cessation of hostilities and immediate ceasefire, restoration of essential utilities and supply lines for food and other essential commodities to ensure humanitarian support. We know that South African soldiers were talking about those supplies. Peaceful resolution of the conflict through the Luanda/Nairobi processes. In other words, agreeing that both processes must be respected and they must go ahead. They also acknowledge the communique or the outcome of the meeting of ministers, and therefore agree with the ministers on immediate unconditional ceasefire and cessation of hostilities, provision of humanitarian assistance, including repatriation of deceased and evacuation of injured. We know that this is happening now with the 18 soldiers, 2 from Malawi, 2 from Tanzania, and 14 from South Africa, and the 7 health personnel who were injured. And also, they have to develop a securitization plan for Goma and surrounding areas. Opening of the main supply route, including Goma, Sake, and other areas. Immediate reopening of Goma Airport, and advice on all related facilitated interventions. The other important issue is that the report of the ministers must ensure that it's presented back after they requested the ministers of defense to go and look at these issues that they have pointed out. The joint summit called for implementation of the concept of operations of the harmonization plan to neutralize FDLR. That's a plus for Rwanda, because Rwanda has been saying, you are saying I must back off, but I'm protecting my territory because you, DRC, you are harboring the alleged genocidaires. And then Rwanda, the Rwanda, on the other hand, must also subscribe to the Rwanda peace processes. And therefore, in short, what is important is that you have to find a lasting solution. And we know that the argument is that a political process will be able to lead to lasting solution to this protracted conflict in the eastern part of the DRC.
Sophie, does the cessation of hostilities and the ceasefire mean that the semi-DRC mission would have to withdraw from the east of DRC?
They didn't indicate withdrawal. There's no word withdrawal. But we had the president saying, we want our boys, soldiers, to come back. We want our soldiers to come back. He said this during the State of the Nation address. He said it when he was at the golf course. There's no use of the word withdraw, because if you withdraw immediately, you leave a vacuum. But the question here is, how do you stay in that area? Because now it has been taken by the M23 rebels. But secondly, today they have advanced to another airport and another area, and they have surrounded that airport, the second airport. And therefore you can see the advancement and how intense and how entrenched they are. And therefore when South African soldiers and the others under SAMI DRC went there, they were going to assist the government in that area. At that time, the government was still in control of Goma. Now that the government is not in control of Goma, what are they doing? And that's why they have to come up with this recommendation that the ministers of defense must look at this situation and come up with a resolution. But the president saying that we want to bring our soldiers back. He was not talking about the deceased. We know in relation to the deceased, he pointed out that the repatriation process is underway. And indeed, as you heard from Kaya Kumalo outside Waterkloof, while it's quiet, we know they will be arriving. We know that the agreement is that not much will happen on arrival, as they still have to do certain processes. And only when they've invited the families to collect the bodies, media will also be invited at that event. And in Uganda, Leon Sinyange saying that they expect that convoy to arrive at Entebbe any moment from now, because it was a long drive. And then they will go to that facility of the UN for more processes in terms of paperwork before the bodies and those who were injured can be taken to South Africa, perhaps with a cargo plane. We know those big ones.
Yeah. And just lastly, from your assessment, does this statement reflect a cooling down, a cooling of heads, so to speak, of the rising tensions that we've seen in the last week and a half? President Paul Kagame having called President Cyril Ramaphosa quite directly a liar, and South African ministers as liars about how they've framed the conversation ongoingly. President Paul Kagame, and various representatives of the government of Rwanda, while never actually conceding or denying whether the government of Rwanda supports M23 with arms and other materials, and never ever quite denying or conceding whether there are Rwandans fighting with M23 in Congo. What they have said, however, is that they understand what M23 is fighting for, and that they quite literally empathize with them as they are fighting for the liberation of their people, tacitly saying that they support the cause of M23. Given the agreements that you have just read out to us now, following today's engagements between the heads of state, does it reflect truly what Rwanda's position has been? You mentioned that it was a win for Rwanda on the agreement of neutralizing FDLR, but does it reflect Rwanda's positioning in how they framed the ongoing conflict?
Yes, I think so. In terms of the FDLR matter, as you pointed out, but also they are talking about foreign forces that must leave the area, and therefore there are many foreign forces there, including those from abroad, outside the continent. But also, I think you are correct. The communique as presented to the world, I must say, because there's huge interest to even former colonizers, is more reconciliatory and very subdued in terms of those tensions. But perhaps behind the scenes, that's where the real discussions took place to try and set the record straight. I didn't expect the communication or the outcomes to reflect the honest, brutal negotiations and positions in the meeting. And I have no doubt that both President Cyril Ramaphosa and the Rwandan President Paul Kagame did touch on the information that both countries were saying that is incorrect, that led to the tension between the two playing itself in public. But as I pointed out on many occasions, it wouldn't have been a problem to find one another after clarifying these matters behind closed doors today, because already they had started a process to try and cement relations and mend the relations between South Africa and Rwanda. Because truth be told, Ramaphosa inherited this frosty relationship. He didn't start this frosty relationship, but he has to find a way to manage it.
Yeah. Sophie, thank you so much for that update. Really do appreciate it. Sophie Mokoena is SABC International Affairs Editor.